Martin Luther King, in many of his speeches, talked to what he described as the white moderates during the Civil Rights era, right? The white moderates were whites who were sort of on the fence, right? They might not have agreed with segregation, but they weren't actively doing anything to assist the black community in gaining rights, right? Those are the moderates. The justification, if I'm creating an exclusionary ideology to kill all these people or to select against all these people with big noses, I need to justify that. I need to warrant or condone my actions to those people that I'm selecting for, right? The people that I'm selecting for are the moderates. So I'm saying, hey, moderates, you need to be careful, right? We're doing this because we love you. We're doing this because you're in danger. Don't you see that these people? Don't you see that these people are dangerous? And then I show a couple of video clips of like the one person with a big nose, running into a house and stealing something, right? And then we generalize, they all do it. Be careful. This is how the myth is created, right? So the attempt to justify the selection and targeting of those who have been selected against is geared towards, right, the moderates. It's the moderates that we want on our side. We want the moderates to buy into the justification and the extermination of these people. And obviously, this is where a lot of communication theory comes in. The use of propaganda, the use of media, the use of persuasive argumentation, and so on and so forth, right? There's many different levels of justification that can be used to pacify the moderate community so that they will remain sort of complicit in the act of genocide. Because as long as they're not fighting against orchestrators and perpetrators, then who really cares, right? They're not getting in the way. It's the people who want to actively protest that are a problem. But as long as we can justify to the moderates, hey, let us do what we're going to do. Hey, let us go kill these people, and you just watch your TV, don't worry about it. Listen to your iPod, you'll be fine. Who cares? Then we've succeeded, right? That who cares attitude, what can I do about it? That's success, right? That's success. Your indifference is their success. Okay, so we have an idea of what an exclusionary ideology is. It's important that you have an understanding of exclusionary ideology because, and this is very, very, very superficial, right? In my sort of analysis of exclusionary ideologies, it's very, very sort of general, but this is just to give you an account. And if you decide to do further research or further readings on your own, when you come to read or understand, or you watch a video on genocide, you'll have a better understanding of how populations, specific people of a targeted group, are selected for and against, and how the orchestrators of genocide sort of persuade the moderates into sort of passivity, right? They pacify the population. All right, pacification, I should say. Number 4, purgation or to purge. Okay, I talked a little bit about purgation, I think in maybe the last video or the video before that. Purgation is the attempt to manipulate and reconstruct social demography, right? That's the way that I've defined it. The attempt to manipulate, manipulate and reconstruct social demography. Obviously, before I get into purgation, I'm just going to jump right into the next definition and tell you what social demography is, right? So the question is, well, what is social demography, right? Social demography. Right. Social demography. Social demography is the essential statistical data pertaining to social diversity. That's how I've defined it, right? It is the essential statistical data pertaining to social. Okay, so before we do purgation, though it's not really that difficult to explain, let's do social demography. The essential statistical data pertaining to social diversity. This is basically your census, right? Right. This is basically your census, right? There are 33% of the American population, roughly, that have bachelor's degrees. There are X number of this race, X number of that race, X number of this race, X number of these religious believers, X number of these religious believers. There's this ratio of men to women. There's this ratio of socioeconomically middle class, affluent, sort of poverty, you know, the statistical data that defines social diversity, right? The diversity of a nation, the diversity of a state. This information is extremely important for many, many reasons. I'm not going to get into that now, right? A lot of it is quite obvious, right? Resource allocation, so on and so forth. What is done with this information, right? What is done with social demography is that there's an attempt to manipulate, right? Manipulate and reconstruct social demography. If social demography, if your census data, and it does, right? If your census data defines things like gender, defines things like income level, defines things like race, defines things like educational level, well, obviously that information, though it's not used in the United States, right? Obviously that information can be used to construct an exclusionary ideology. The Khmer Rouge, in a perfect example, selected against those who had basically more than a 7th grade education, right? If you wore eyeglasses, if you were literate, if you attended the university, God forbid you attended the university, you were immediately selected against, right? The people who were selected for were the sort of agricultural working class, because what they wanted to do is basically create or enslave a class of people to just be agricultural workers, right? So obviously you don't need the academics around here telling these people that they can do more with their life. Not that there's any problem with that at all, right? I mean, you can have a very comfortable, a very happy life doing that, but to force someone to tell you that's the only thing you can do, that's a whole different ballgame, right? So what ends up happening is in purging the population, also coupled with this idea of exclusion, you can see that if we have a population and we'll say we want to select against educated people, then I target, using my social demography, using my census data, all those individuals that are educated, that have a particular class of education that we want to select against, right? And what I attempt to do is, after I target them, to manipulate, right, to reconstruct this demography, right? I want to change the nature of our social demography by purging the people that I've selected against from our population, right? Either through forced emigration or extermination, right? So that I will have, the goal then is to have a population without educated people, right? And that's just an example. People with, I erased it, but people with larger noses get purged. People who are black get purged. The Jews get purged. Whoever gets purged, right? There's always somebody. There's always somebody that can be selected against. Even, and I'm not going to jump the gun too much, right? But even in the state after this, there'll be another group that's selected against, right? At least that's my argument. I'm not a utopist philosopher by any sense. If anything, I'm more of a dystopic philosopher, which is probably bad, but you know, it is what it is. So what ends up happening in this idea of purgation is that social demography and census data and so on is used to specifically target those members of the population that we want to purge. Once they've been targeted and selected, then we can create and devise this exclusionary ideology to justify their extermination, justify their purgation to those who've been selected for, the moderates, and they can remain complicit while we get our killers and thugs together to sort of force these people out of the state, or we kill these people, right? So the idea of sort of purgation and social demography sort of work hand in hand, and I wanted to present that information